Welcome to the Seventh Planet broadcast. Today's Sunday, November 27th, and I've got two really special guests with me today. I have the legendary Pat Broderick and my really close writing associate and good friend, Matt LaCroix. I'm going to start by introducing you all to Pat. He's a legendary artist that found his way to Marvel Comics in the year 1980, where he and writer J.M. DeMatteis created the Creature Commandos in Weird War Tales number 93. Later in 1982, Mr. Broderick left Marvel for DC Comics, where his creative genius brought to life Firestorm, Captain Atom, Batman Year 3, Swamp Thing, and Green Lantern. After 10 years at DC Comics, circa 1992, Pat returned to his old stomping grounds at Marvel, where he worked as a regular penciler on both Alpha Flight and Doom 2099. In the year 1995, Pat turned to advertising full-time, moving to Dallas to lead the in-house creative department at Tracy Locke and Partnership. The company handled packaging, print, and television ads for PepsiCo, Frito-Lay, Pizza Hut, Federal Express, Harrah's Casinos, and Hasbro. This led to design work for DNA Productions on the 2001 movie Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius. In 2003, Pat served as a member of the animation department faculty at Tampa's International Academy of Design and Technology. By the year 2004, Devil's Due Publishing revived Micronauts, with Broderick returning to the title and successfully illustrated 3 issues. Later, Pat was led to develop T-Rex, a gritty science fiction tale that featured in Heavy Metal magazine. Pat's latest creative masterpiece is the comic series Nibiru, the Legend of the Anunnaki, an epic Middle Eastern saga inspired by the religious ancient lore, truth, and Sumerian cuneiform history. Pat's now actively serving his artistic community by giving back to the craft that has given him and his fans so much enjoyment. Pat has rolled with the changing times and is now teaching illustration and storytelling through his online venue. Say hello to everybody, Pat.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, Pat. It's so good to be here with you, my friend.
It's good to meet you, Matt. It's good to be here. It's good to be anywhere at my age, so.
Absolutely.
Also joining me today is a really good friend, Matt LaCroix. He's a passionate writer, endowed with an energetic and really kind spirit. He grew up in the outdoors of northern New England. A strong connection back to nature was firmly rooted in the morals of his life at an early age. He spent most of his free time hiking and exploring the nearby mountains and forests. His persistent yearning for adventure led him into profound, life-changing experiences which inspired him to write. While attending Plymouth State University, he began writing for local magazines and newspapers and published his first book at the age of 22. That led him to write for several national magazines such as Backpacker and AMC Outdoors. At the age of 32, he published his second book entitled The Illusion of Us, where he became focused on researching and writing about ancient history and consciousness. Matt is currently writing his third book and working with several prominent writers. He co-authored the Anunnaki Genesis screenplay and is an active lead producer of the Anunnaki series, Season 1, Episodes 1 through 7, with our current recording, Episode 4. So welcome to both of you guys. I'm really honored to have you here today. And we just want to get to know you a little bit better, Pat, now that you're working with us and have provided us artwork for our screenplay and TV efforts. So say hello to everybody and tell us how you got here. How did all this start for you becoming an artist?
Oh, becoming an artist? I think I was first inspired as a young child. Gerald, I basically cut my reading teeth and my drawing teeth about the same time back in the 63, 64, 1963, 64, and was inspired by comics and always wanted to draw comics ever, as a child. So I lucked out when I was actually 17 going on 18, and I had learned about a contest that DC Comics was putting on, and entered into the contest and actually won and was hired in a training program at DC Comics. And then after that's when I moved on to Marvel and got my feet wet in advertising, and led me to being here right now. A few things along the way that made that an enjoyable journey. I have had a pretty long career in comics, and I've enjoyed it, and it's been a labor, sometimes slave.
Matt, you want to chime in there? You look like you got a question on your mind.
So, Pat, I know you're a big fan of art and designing, but how long have you been a comic book hero fan? How far back does that go to when you were maybe a child?
Oh, I think I was reading Timely comics before they became Marvel comics, but I was too young to read. But I fell in love with the comics probably when I was about 4 years old. I'm 63, so 59 years ago. Yeah, easy.
Wow.
Well, I love sequential storytelling. At that time, I didn't realize that that's what I was looking at, was sequential storytelling. But through my research and my experience in comics, I've since learned its history, going back to Roman times, and its current form today in media. It's nothing really gets filmed without a storyboard, whether it's commercials or cinema. So it's really important in that aspect. It's a different set of rules, and it enables people to reach out with that like 15-second time bite and get a message across.
So somewhere along the line, as a youngster, you decided that storytelling was something that you were about, because eventually that's really what you just described, the storyboarding, telling a lot of information in a short period of time with pictures and words. That's really what comics do extremely well. So somehow you got convinced that you wanted to be a storyteller and entered this field. When did that happen?
Well, probably back when I was in high school, because I was exploring the science fiction realm of writing paperbacks, and became, at that point, started developing clarity and visualization within my head. So I was able to see these movies of Edgar Rice Burroughs' Tarzan or John Carter of Mars. I could see these things in my head as I read them, and it's just basically gotten clearer and clearer through the years of the constant use of sequential storytelling, Gerald. So yeah, I would say in high school, when I became a little more inspired. I mean, I read Mark Twain when I was probably a pre-tween, as we all may have done back then, depending on the area of the country you lived in. And, back then for me, it was this mid-'60s or early '60s. So,
Matt, if you don't mind, I want to ask him a little bit of a follow-up on that. So when you were in high school, and you were experimenting with visualization, and this is very much an artistic trait anyway, did you feel that you had a gift that other kids didn't have in your visualizing and expression ability that way?
No, well, I knew that I had more interest than most of the kids in my class for that hour or hour and a half that was in there. I enjoyed the knowledge that the art teachers shared with me. There were other students who also had skills that they had developed. It was interesting. I mean,
but you recognized you had some sort of talent, some sort of visionary skill for visualizing and telling a story that may have been far and beyond what other people were interested in at that time, even in high school.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't realize even then that there were rules and guidelines in sequential art. We really didn't. I used to, one of my first sample pages, Gerald, I took and drew just a big S across the page. All right. And the S became the direction I would set the flow of the action in my panels after being exposed to some of the greats in the industry by that time. So I knew that there were secrets in there, but there wasn't any books. It wasn't written down anywhere. So I had to dissect backwards.
Well, that's what makes you an early pioneer in this space, for sure.
Well,
So Pat, what were your early things that you were drawing when you were in those early art classes and the teachers walking around looking at what everyone's doing? Were you doing something that they would kind of look back and be like, "Wow, Pat, that's amazing," or were you one of those people who's largely overlooked because maybe you hadn't bloomed yet, or you hadn't shown your true talent, or had someone believe in you? But what were those early days of art like?
I guess I stood out because it always got the attention of the art teacher. The pieces that I worked on, like back in my elementary school days, were basically copying the master's paintings, not realizing the only reason I was attracted to it was because it was a battle scene. So as a kid, it appealed to me that way, and I would draw part of it and see how well I could copy it. But that was for, I was probably 12 years old. And by that time, I had been copying scenes from comics, all Marvel Comics stuff, for about 4 years. So I had a grasp on, I guess, just through the constant submerging myself in comics, over the years. I picked up stuff I didn't realize I had, so I had to sort things out.
I wanted to follow up on that. Or go ahead, Matt.
Oh, I was just going to say, it seems like that focus became really entrained on the hero's journey and the hero's travel. And I wanted to ask you, what do you see as the essential character traits that all heroes share?
Most heroes, well, they all should be sharing an uphill battle. Okay, rolling that stone to the top of the mountain. That's your hero, because he never gives up. Okay, the odds are stacked against him. There's nuances in writing, how you can structure that, but it's he strives to accomplish his task, his goal. Now, a lot of times, we're taught that they battle for the common folk, okay, such as Hercules and the tales of Hercules and whatnot. So that's laid in there. And then you go into the Asgardian, and it's more of a cosmic battle going on. And then the stories of their gods and demigods. My earliest exposure to heroes outside of comic books was, of course, the Sunday school, all right, and reading the different passages in the Old Testament of the early heroes, okay, and it's weird because they restricted us to just reading those types of things, instead of exploring the entire Old Testament. They just sort of gave us what they give us on TV today.
Yeah. Well, I was curious. You were drawing these battle scenes. Is it because you saw it as a conflict between light and dark, or was it because it was the place where the hero emerged and that you could tell the story? And did you see yourself as possibly being a hero on that time?
Back then, Gerald, to tell you the truth, I was inspired more by just the fact that I was also inspired by history, becoming inspired by history. So seeing the paintings was the only way at that time to basically get an idea on the armor and how they looked, especially within a battle scene. Like I said, I was 12 years old. I was more interested in swinging from vines in the trees in Brandon, and fantasizing that I was Tarzan at the time, which, I
That's
grew
funny.
up out in a rural area, so there's a lot to fantasize with, you know.
Yeah, I meant to mention when I was a kid, I did a lot of drawing, and one of the things that I drew was medieval armor for some reason. I was drawn to that too, and I have sketches of it even today. I was like, wow, why was I interested in that? So what
Yeah.
this
I
brings
used
up,
to always draw castles and big castle
yeah.
conquests and battles.
Well, what this brings up for me is, and of course I didn't come to this until much later in my life, is that there's some sort of genetic or energetic archetype for us as men and women, heroes and heroines, that seems to be designed in us, that we're all kind of walking this hero path. So we pick a hero and we go, that's my favorite, right? But in reality, it's because we identify with them and we see that that might be a trait in us. Is that possible, Pat?
Yeah. Gerald, I used to say, or I would be asked this question, you know, what's the key to success? And I would tell them, you know, it's like hard work and dedication. But then as I gained some years and had been thrown some severe curveballs by life, I had changed that definition to being able to adapt in an ever-changing social environment. So you find yourself in situations where you have to make decisions, and sometimes everyone benefits from that decision, and sometimes not everyone does benefit from that decision. So I try to be fair with things, and I also am realistic enough to know that you can be fair and be doing stuff, and life will jump out from behind a tree and with a brick and smack you upside the head, and it just does happen. So there's the adapting in that ever-changing social environment. You know?
Well, that's what the hero has to do to get that rock up the top of the hill, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
Exactly.
yeah. You know,
Pat, so you've worked with a lot of different heroes and you've drawn a lot of different characters over your lifetime. But what are some of your favorite ones that you've been part of at both DC and Marvel?
Well, at Marvel, my most recent series there was in a group of books called 2099, and I was the artist on Doom 2099, and
Wow.
it was a true joy to do. You have heroes and you have archetypes, right? You know, you have a hero and you'll have a villain or somebody who for there to be a problem, there has to be two opposing factors, whether they're both good or both bad or one good, one bad, whatever. And approaching a storyline from Dr. Doom's point of view was a wonderful change, you know, for a comic book artist, because all the while it's always from the hero's point of view. But to do it and to work with a brilliant writer, John Francis Moore, who really went into the character depth of Doom and his struggles and his ego and how everything is justified by his ego. And most powerful people, that is it. I mean, a lot of powerful people cannot accept being told no, or it's not a good idea, you know, and they will pursue it anyway and throw enough money at it until it appears to be successful or not, you know, just it's that drive, that ego feeding. So it was nice approaching a character of Doom stature and getting into that characterization. It's helped me understand in writing other comics and things that the underlying motivation is always important. And I always tell my family, it's like if you can figure out a person's motivation, you know how to enter the conversation. If you know what their motivation is, whether it's personal gain or are they on an ego trip or are they seeking knowledge, you know? So
yeah. Well, I wanted to touch on that just a little bit more. Now, you mentioned that you were a big fan of Doctor Strange, and with that movie just being released recently, what's your comments about his particular path? I find it pretty interesting that you were interested in him.
Well, my history with Doctor Strange goes back to the mid-'60s when he first appeared. He was a sole creation of Steve Ditko for Marvel Comics and was a backup feature for, I think, Tales to Astonish or Astonishing Tales. They would flip the titles depending on which book. And he was a master of the mystic arts, okay? And so as a child, it inspired me, of course, because, okay, here's magic. And he was a good character in the sense that he had fallen upon hard times. He had been successful, but had, as a surgeon, but had had written in the comic series, a car accident had pinched nerves in his hands. So he could no longer perform surgery. And of course, his ego was like, well, I can't go into research medicine, so I may as well wander the world. All right, ends up in Tibet seeking these different cures, and meets an ancient, well, he was called the Ancient One in the series, and the Ancient One had lived for thousands of years, okay?
Yeah.
So he took him in and trained him, helped him to use his arts for the benefit of mankind, because there were forces at play that were constantly threatening mankind. So sure that Ditko at that time picked up a lot from H.P. Lovecraft and his writings. Okay, so but you know, it's sort of like cleaned it up a bit for children, because all comics were PG rated back.
Did you see the latest release of Doctor Strange?
No, actually, was thinking about doing that this weekend, Gerald.
I think you might really enjoy it, especially if you go all the way back to '63 and you were a fan of it then. Because
yeah, I expect to enjoy it. I do love the actor. I love the role that he played in the Star Trek franchise. He is excellent. He is an excellent actor.
Well, good. We won't bring it up and spoil anything for you in the movie, but I definitely want to talk to you after you see it.
Yeah, oh, definitely. I'm looking forward to it. Definitely, I'm looking forward to it. But it's been a busy week and weekend, so you know, as it is still today, you know.
Yeah. Well, I one of the last items I introduced that you were working on was this new comic release you did called Nibiru and the Legend of the Anunnaki.
Yeah.
And I I found that very synchronous with my path, because in 2013 I wrote my first book, The Anunnaki of Nibiru.
Right.
And ended up on Coast to Coast and blah blah blah. Changed my whole path. So how did you get this renewed interest in doing that particular story, especially as you're operating on your own now? You're not at DC. You're not at Marvel.
No.
So what was the catalyst that led to you doing that series? Because it's fantastic.
Well, it was two things, Gerald. Basically, Matt, it was two things. Number one, I'd been working commercially for, say, 30 years or so, and was still working commercially for it when I had started developing properties of my own. Okay, so the T-Rex that you mentioned and whatnot was developed before the Nibiru and the Legend of the Anunnaki series. But back in 2012, if you'll remember, the media was blasted full towards the end of the year of the Mayan end date, December 12th, you know, or 21st, and 2012, and just the aggravating aspect of them only scratching the surface of that legend and not reading two more paragraphs down and understanding, you know, that it's just the end of a time cycle. Why would they need to create four? I mean, three's enough. You're going to start over. The measurements are precise. Why would they, you know, so.
Well said, Pat.
You know, actually, I have to chime in right there, Pat. You know, we're doing our current recording on an episode over the calendar quarrel that led to what happened in Meets America. So that is so interesting that you bring that up.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's no doubt that these guys understood the highest levels of math. Their calculations were down to the quarter second, I believe, you know, for the count of the hour. And they did it without the help of any little, you know, computerized gadget or, my Lord, the idea of sharing that knowledge, okay? Imagine being a young Mayan son to a Mayan priest who's going to inherit that office, but you don't like math, okay? You're doomed to still participate in that unless something happens to you along the way. Myself, I would have fit in well, probably architectural wise, and creating images and scenes. But what had happened was I had gotten into the search again because of everything that was going on. And I had remembered reading the 12th Planet back in '97. That was my first introduction to the whole Sumerian theory, background, research. And so I thoroughly enjoyed that book. But it was his first one. I think it was probably came out the year he wrote it or the year after. So there was a lot of research to catch up on.
Yeah, so he wrote that.
2012, yeah.
He wrote that one in '76, I guess. The 12th.
Yeah.
Now, after you discovered that in '97, did you read lots more stuff? Is it because it continued to this day, that research into that space?
Oh, the research continues every day, Gerald. It's more than just an interesting concept where, I picked it up, I read it, and I enjoyed it. It answered a lot of questions that I had, whether or not, those questions are accurate or those answers are accurate, because they generally apply themselves subjectively to the, event. So, but it gave me a lot of basis to do my own research. And I really didn't research the 12th planet and the Sumerians again. What I did was back in 2012, it was just, and it seems very cyclical because here we are again today. But certain things are going on that were just irritating the hell out of me. So I decided I needed to start seeking some answers. All right. And so I started doing some research, and I stumbled across, by that time, because of the Nibiru and the promotion of other sites, the Zeta site and whatnot, and I don't go to her site. I don't listen to anyone who basically puts a date, that changes every 6 months, every year. And I love messing with them. I troll them at times on this.
Oh, no.
I ask them, so what do you base it on? And then they give me something. It's like, yeah, but that's the Bible. What about earlier writings? And then you hit that brick wall. And it's like, I've been there before. I've been that brick wall before, But I started investigating it, and then I started reading about the history of earlier civilizations and how they linked up in chronological order, correct? I mean, it's in all the history books. And what followed along with that was religion. It locked up in a chronological order all through history. History books full of that. So then when I got back to the Sumerian writings, the Sumerian Kings list, and then also introduced to the Enuma Elish through the downloads you can get from the universities, and the story of Gilgamesh, which they had already done in comics, but a very, very totally changed version. I mean, just, nothing at all about Enkidu, just his struggles, and then running into, basically Noah at the bottom of the ocean and being given the plan. And then that was it. It was done. It was over. And it's like, this is that epic tale, so I knew that there was more. Found the source for it. And in the reading of the King's List, started to understand about the longevity. So that led to the introduction of the Anunnaki, all right, and then the explanation of that. So then it became more of a, aha, all right, here's why religion is the way it is, okay? And also, here's why governments are the way they are, because they're basically still fighting under the same original banner of who they support, okay?
The Hatfields in the coin. Go ahead, Matt.
That was beautifully well said. You just basically summarized what we talk about on the Anunnaki series and all this stuff with the Anunnaki Genesis. You have a very, very good understanding of the truth of history from the evidence, I want to say. Very impressive. Not everybody has that very in-depth historical evidence-driven viewpoint.
Well, notice what happened.
The dots are there. I don't see how people can miss it, but they do.
Well, that's the thing. If you understand from our genealogy table who the real players were, and you make them real characters and they're not just myth.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you fast forward to now, everything makes sense, just like Pat sees, just like you and I see. And actually, I have to say, this next episode that we're working on, Matt has seen the Enki and Enlil, Hatfield and McCoy battle going on cross-culturally, and it really has affected him.
Well, not only that, but not even been able to keep their children and grandchildren in line, and the trouble and, you know.
Serial killers to saints.
Well, everything is like showing that human beings were chess pieces. Now, we were pawns and we did our labor, or we were knights and we went and fought these wars for them. Now, they didn't care how many of us died in those battles. I mean, because why? We reproduce so quickly, it's like peeling off our skin. There's my son next to me. And from their point of view, you know? So
that's hard to wrap your arms around, but I think they truly do see us as not only expendable pawns, but reincarnatable pawns that they can just keep using through generations.
Well, yeah, but you know, there's that big question though, and it's like, who did they worship? Who was their God? Okay, because they didn't just appear at the moment of the Big Bang. All right, not from the story that we're told about their own history. So war was a well-known factor to them. And it became a well-known factor for us here. But I see them using it as like, here's our rule. We don't fight each other, but we can let our humans whip the crap out of each other and then decide upon that. Okay, so we were taught, we went from minor skirmishes when we lived out in the field, in the caves and the trees, you know, and that's over need. Those skirmishes are over need. To organized battle and being ordered to fight. So we were taught that, just like we were taught that gold's precious, you know. And then you start going down the methods they use, you know, being told that the streets of heaven are paved with gold. Okay, well, what is good as gold to this, you know, being that has the power to create anything gold just by our concept of his ability to affect our reality. So there were these little things that led down this path and then also connected back to that, okay? The origin of these dogmas.
Matt, you want to talk about the creator of all and what your take is relative to the Anunnaki? I know you've read
yes.
Planet, so.
I mean, Pat, you're nailing pretty much one after another of these bullet points for explaining ancient history. A very impressive understanding of it, and it's amazing looking at. Gerald said a minute ago that, you know, these Anunnaki represent everything from, you know, murderers to saints, and we are simply represented as them. Then we have the same thing shown through us in our culture as well. And like Gerald mentioned, the creator of all, and if there's some kind of a plan here, because if we are important, and I'm sure you've seen, Pat, so many times in some of the most ancient religious texts before they became a little more polluted, we can call it, they talked about how special we are and how we were given gifts by some of these gods and how some of those gifts were not known or were being suppressed to be known. Yeah. And so it is very interesting to tie back to everything you do with your art. The hero's journey the hero is about this kind of realization of who we really are. And then it's about overcoming all of those challenges to then uncover whatever it is that your goal is during that journey. And I want to know if you could speak to that, because that's something you seem to really understand a lot.
Well, okay, Matt. There's the individual hero, okay, and then there's the concept of the species and what the species strives for, okay, and I believe you're touching on more of what the species is destined for, okay. I'm referring back to, well, with that in mind, let me refer back to the end of the age of the Anunnaki here at that time, and the interpretations that they were told to leave, okay? And they were told to leave by a power that they respected enough to do what they said, okay? And if you're a civilization as powerful as the Anunnaki, then that person of authority over them has to have control of great power. All right. And so, and the understanding of that, you know, I like the way Sitchin paraphrased it in his last book, The Memoirs of Inky, where he said, you know, Earth belongs to man. Earth is ours because we're indigenous here. And the great creator that I believe in, I tell these people, you know, you say, you're going to go to hell if you're not a Christian. It's like, well, you know, the great creator loves an ant as well as an elephant. It's his creation. All right. And as an artist, I know when I finish creating something, I've created something I've poured a lot of love into. So I love the work that I create, you know, therefore I love it.
It shows.
I love every bit of it. And so I also look at it as the great creator was the very, 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 very first artist that we have any awareness of.
Yes.
So I find the little separations of people by the little tribes, you know, it's offensive. So the way I look at it is the Anunnaki were instructed to leave and to guide us because they started something that naturally wasn't supposed to have started for a long time. I mean, a very long time. The reports that I'm reading now is that our physical selves as a hominid is kind of like reaching the end of what they think genetic development is going to be for us in this form, which is a big statement to make.
What a leap, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, they've given up looking for the missing link, but if they find one, then they'll plaster our faces with it.
They'll be looking a very long time, right, Gerald?
Yeah, I know, because we're sitting here and we're talking. I mean, we are the missing link. There is no missing link. It is us, you know. So I think that when things happen on a global scale that involves a species that has gained intelligence and may be threatened, I think at that time we may be getting another little announcement on the loudspeaker from the principle of creation. And I hope to be alive at that day because I tease my people. It's like, you know, on the end day of your book of Revelations, it's like I hope that the great creator of all comes out and spanks Jehovah and Yahweh's in front of everybody.
So you don't think we're going to end up like the day the earth stood still with Keanu Reeves?
No.
Pushed right to the edge of the Faustian cliff. You either change or you're gone.
Well, that could happen from Atlanta, Georgia, if something busts out of the DC. You know, the biological research, you know,
right.
It could happen any day. I mean, for a while there, we were like stone death afraid of the Zika virus and everything we've been reading about the Zika virus and the spread of the Zika virus.
Yeah.
And we're on the verge of that type of apocalyptic scenario on a daily basis. I mean,
yeah.
That was like fear-mongering to me.
Especially in the U.S. You know, I'm not living there now, but just watching in from the outside. It's almost like you can see the angst that everybody's being vectored into having over, you know, what's going on. It's like, wow.
If something geographical happens to the U.S., you know, something massive, like say up the Madrid Valley, okay? Think of all the nuclear power plants that are going to be polluting the atmosphere or the ground at that time just from being broken up by that type of calamity.
Like
so
Fukushima.
there's a scenario.
Yeah.
Now, if Yellowstone goes, boom, you know, Texas is not going to be a nice place to live.
So you're prepared as an avatar no matter what happens to do your heroic mission, no matter what body you're in, are you not? This dimension.
Well, yeah. I mean,
that's the hero's journey to me.
Yeah.
I mean, don't fear what's coming. You just keep doing your mission.
You do what you need to do till the end. Yeah.
I'm a visualizer, right? You know, and so I put myself in these scenarios. I designed my bunker that I'll find from, you know, a piece of land that has the perfect slope so that it can maintain the creation of water and everything, you know, that I'll need through natural cleansing methods, just using gravity and drip tubs and things as it goes down the hill. I've spent time thinking on it, and I fantasize it, and I show my wife, and she's terrified. You know, it's like, we've gone back to cavemen. It's like, yeah, because, you know, we're going to have to depend on just natural resources. Okay, so it won't be hooking up a generator because I can't process gasoline. Okay.
Well, we might end up at the galactic center, like the Mayans said. Our energy bodies light up, and we pull a Lucy, right?
Well, and when is that exact center? Because we're talking about a vast distance of space, and we've just entered it.
Yeah. Well, it's like I've been looking into this too. How wide is the galactic center? How, I've looked into how much the energy is different there. It's tremendously different.
Yeah.
So how long does it take till you get to the apex of it? Well, it may be halfway through the sign of Aquarius, because Aquarius is lined up with the center. And if we're entering that, we're entering the galactic center, which is very, very interesting from a timing standpoint. So who knows what the creator of all is going to throw us as a curveball with a genetic upgrade, a new light body? Who knows?
Well, and it could have been our end of species time. We don't really know.
That's true.
It could be. My goal in life right now, Gerald, is to get my books out, take care of my family. Stumbling upon this and digging into the depths of this story. I first initially planned on finishing, like, winding a good chunk of this up by the 6th issue, and having it with the creation of the Adamu.
Yeah.
Right there. But the more I am digging into it, both research but also mentally, I've got this whole scenario laid out in my head now of how difficult it must have been for Marduk on the Nibiru to get the news that his grandfather had overthrown his father-in-law.
Oh yeah,
That jeopardizes his position. So it's like, he comes here and then he gets shafted again.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I know. So, the complex relationships between these beings. We like to go, this one's good and this one's bad, so we can have the hero and the villain, but they often play multiple roles, which makes it hard to put them in a box.
Yeah. It's that juggle for control and power within a royal family, and Lord knows, did we not inherit that from them?
Yes, absolutely.
But that's what.
Remember that famous quote, Pat? The kingship the kingship was lowered from heaven to earth. So basically, very telling right there. Yeah.
It and with it, all its problems too. The setting of the stage of the battles of of power and shifting of control, just for inheritance. Okay. The feeling of being the most important child that will unite and bring the royal bloodline back to the throne, to being the second not even second in line, okay, to the throne, once the position had changed between Anu and Ololu. So that, to be the born prince.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're not even can be considered fourth down from the line now.
Because of your father.
Yeah.
Got even better. Marduk was, he took the reins of the Lord of the Earth rank on the Anunnaki Council, rank 50, circa 2000 BCE. He stayed in Babylon, battled with Enlil, all the wars of gods and men that went on there. Well, this brings up the idea of the different models they were using for the zodiac, and in order to determine where they were in celestial time to go, it's my turn to rule now, because it seems they had tied their rulership reigns to a term limit that was specified by the heavens in the zodiac. So that's a very interesting topic, because we're recording that right now. But
it is, and it's set up. To wait for so long, and then to be told now in his lifespan, hey, it's going to be maybe 20 more years, 20 more shars. Okay, well within his lifespan as a Nibiran, natural born.
Matt, why don't you ask Pat how his comic series is doing, especially this one, the new Nibiru.
Yeah, and I wanted, so you, Pat, you're the first quality artist to take on, I think, the Anunnaki and bring it to life, right?
That's a dubious title. I don't know if my work is quality, but I appreciate the
yours is supreme. Don't kid yourself.
Absolutely. Let me tell you, Pat, first, before I go on with that question, I'm someone who's seen the end of detailed drawing art
artwork
emerge into the world of technology where it becomes controlled by mostly computers, right? I've lived through that transition very well. I've seen both sides of it. And I got to tell you, I would always go back to the old school Disney look or the old school comic look of where it was all hand drawn. And that's why I so respect your work and your art, because that brings that early, detailed, passionate form of art, and then it takes these Anunnaki historical figures and it brings them right to life.
Well,
and so tell me, after doing that, and you've done, I encourage everyone to look into all the amazing stuff that you've done with the Anunnaki. But after you've done that, what has the reception been from that?
So far, the reception's been real good. My distribution's through social media and on site at conventions. So the convention's response has been very good, and the comments and some of the mails that have been coming in have been real positive too. I think they're refreshed by the fact that these aren't superheroes looking characters. They don't have powers. You know, their powers is their science, which we can grasp our head around. Okay. But also it's kicked back into a time where I'm still playing with the end of the last dinosaur period. So at the end of the last ice age, it gives me the affordability of including some creatures that crosses that boundary, because when they came before the humans, you know, during their exploration. So it's, you know, it's like us, you know, the saber-tooth is a massive lion. And to them, if they were 14 to 16 feet tall, which is basically where I peg their height from the Sumerian illustrations I've seen with the priests approaching them and them being seated, and I look at the height of the priest and then look at the figure and can easily extrapolate that figure getting out of that chair visually. So it's, you know, what we would consider a massive cat would still be a pretty large cat to a Anunnaki. I mean, keep in mind, those saber-tooths were not small.
Yeah, it's no kitty cat to them either.
Now, this, I want to chime in. This may not be a very fair question, but I got to ask it. Now, you're living somewhat in the Bible Belt, because I used to live down there.
Yeah.
How has that community responded to this information for you?
The community responds in the way that they always will. Okay, it's their duty to shut out any additional information, not to go beyond doctrine. When you get them trapped, then they revert back to indoctrinated responses.
Yeah. So that didn't change. That didn't change for you. That's the same I still get too. But
yeah,
I see it changing. I see it changing in this information age.
Well, it's the younger generation is far more open-minded. You know, we are dealing with culture, social educational culture, to use educational as a loose term in this respect, but that's what they are doing. They are educating their children and their grandchildren in the same repetitive information that was falsely created and, you know, has changed over time. I mean, I tell them, it's like when you're older, then you have the right to at least research, and I steer them in the right direction. Hopefully they can make their own connections and do their own hypotheses on how this worked and how this developed. Yeah. I can lead them to it, but as long as I can hold their head underwater, and all they're going to do is drown. You know, they've got to be willing to drink. Yeah.
The reason I bring this up, somebody was asking me what venues were available to younger people for being introduced to the Anunnaki without going and decoding cuneiform for themselves, and I refer them to go, and you're on episode 5 or 6 now in your comic series.
I've got 5 done. 6 is plotted out. I realized with the additional work that I'm adding into the series, what was going to be 6 will probably end up being 12 to get to that point of the creation of the Adamant. You know,
well, it might be really great if you were to somehow to do some analysis of Adapu's life as a child, so that you can reach out to the younger generation. It might be really great. I'm just thinking out of the box, but
yeah. You've stumbled on one of my not so modestly hidden marketing things here, Gerald.
that's okay.
Number one, it's a comic subject matter that hasn't been touched by anybody yet. Now they've had Anunnaki characters in a science fiction way, but they only used in name only. Not at all about the true history.
That's why you'll be remembered.
Right.
One of the enjoyable challenges.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just saying, one of the enjoyable challenges in this for me was being forced to sit down and try to contemplate a fashion style that would eventually generate a look and style for 3 different continents. Okay, so it had to be derived from what they brought from Nibiru. Okay, so the clothing you'll see a mixed mash of Mesoamerican and Egyptian, along with Middle Eastern thrown together. The other thing that I thought would be is the fact that when you're planning a space expedition and you're going to leave an outpost, the last thing you're going to ask for is a tailor to go along with you, because it's just not one of the top things on the list. So what I have to keep in mind is a de-evolving of the wardrobe as time goes on, you know, because first they will appear in, you know, their fish suits and their eagle's helmets, which are designed into flight helmets, and the space suits is simply fish suit is simply the fish net design across it. So there was a lot of recent life history designs and movies I was able to extrapolate a little of that from and throw together the outfits. The ships had to both represent the flaming serpents in South America, but also had to represent a little bit of the Egyptian feel to them. So I sort of combined these different elements into different things within the story so I could lead myself out of it.
Right. Yeah, I know we had discussions about costume and some of the artwork you did for us, and I think
the architecture is all there. That's the good thing about it. You know, the pyramid being their primary architectural design form, and that's the other thing that links all of the continents together.
Yeah, well, that's actually a very important point we're bringing out with the Anunnaki series. Yeah. And I think, Matt, unless you have some more questions, I think let's let Pat tell us what venues he's operating in, what's coming up, and how people can find you online, Pat.
Okay. Please, Pat, I just want to say, before you say that, I think your art and the way you connect these stories, like Gerald said, of a child's not going to look at cuneiform tablets. It's just not going to happen. No. You bridge an important gap between this information, bringing it to life in a passionate artwork, and I think that's incredibly significant. And I want to say thank you for that. And so that those should be needed readings for all the young people in the future that go along through this. Go ahead, Gerald. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so tell us about what comic venues you're going to be participating in the future, where people can find you online, and how they get in touch with you and find out more about you.
Okay, well, right now, by in the future, if you're talking about 2017, I'm putting my convention appearance calendar together. And I've got feelers out right now. I've gotten some verbal confirmations, but I'd like to get everything in writing. I will be appearing at the Orlando MegaCon, which will be mid-spring of 2017. There's also the Dallas MegaCon that I believe is secured. And then there's a Quebec con by the same promoter. So they have agreed to send me to all three of those. Right now, since I'm filling my calendar up, that's the only thing that I've got, I would say, a response back from, and sounds like I'll be heading to. After that,
about websites or contact you online, how can people look you up? Like,
well, websites is
PatBroderickArt.com or what?
Yeah.
Okay.
PatBroderickArt.com for my website. I'm on Facebook under Pat's Best of the Best at yahoo.com is my account. And I have a dedicated page to my Nibiru art, which is then kind of infiltrated by other general comic book art. But I used social media for the last 4 years to promote myself, promote my shows, promote the commission work I was doing, and also the Nibiru project. I'm sure that there'll be more opportunities in the future to be promoting some of these other projects real soon. And it's quite literally what has brought me to your attention, Gerald. It was the work that I posted, from my stuff on the social media. And also as a ex-instructor, having recently just did that lecture at the University of North Carolina, I, of course, had a long discussion with the students about utilizing social media.
Yeah, I think that's a really great move for you to possibly use a tool like what we're talking about here and have classes online, because you're clearly actively giving to the community the tools that you acquired as a legendary artist. And I think that's really great. The fact that you found your passion and you're sharing it with the community, that's all of any of us can do as a hero in this path.
Sounds like the hero's journey to me, Gerald.
Yeah, exactly. Well, with that said, I want to thank both of you for taking an hour with me today, talking about what we're doing together. And there'll be more that we discuss in the future as we're working on TV series and movies that will involve Pat's artwork. And so hopefully we'll be glued at the hip for here till the next venue on a big screen. We'll just see how that goes. So
yeah, to the next Backtune arrives. Yeah.
Thank you, Pat. It was an honor to talk to you.
Matt, it was an honor and pleasure meeting you. And thank you guys for inviting me. This was a pleasure to do. I was wondering how I was going to fill an hour's worth of talking, but it wasn't a problem at all. We got
not at all.
Not a problem with an expanded mind like you, my friend. It was a great chat.
Well, now you're giving away my life history, and let's not go there. Okay.
Okay, with that said,